Hello students, welcome back. Today we are doing a new lesson on plant reproduction. What is reproduction? Reproduction is to produce a new plant. Now in my last video we studied about pollination. Now pollination itself is not enough for the formation of a new plant. Pollination has to be followed by another process called fertilization. So let us study what is fertilization. Now during pollination, you know that the pollen grains settle on the stigma. So during pollination, the pollen grain lands on the stigma of the flower. Then the pollen grains grow, they germinate and grow a tube called the pollen tube. Now the pollen tube grows downward into the style till it reaches the ovary. It enters the ovary and then into the ovule. Now the pollen tube carries the male cell called the male gamete. You know pollen comes from stamens. Now stamens are the male reproductive part of a flower. So the pollen tubes carry the male gamete into the ovary. It enters the ovule. The ovule contains the female gamete, also called the egg cell. Now what happens in the ovule is the male gamete and the female gamete fuse. This fusion is called fertilization. So what is fertilization? The fusion of the male gamete in the pollen grains with the female gamete in the ovary is called fertilization. Now what happens after fertilization? After fertilization, the flower loses its brightness. The petals, the sepals and the stamens fall off. The ovary grows in size and becomes the fruit. The wall of the ovary becomes the wall of the fruit, and the ovules develop into seeds. Now, when we get a new plant through the fusion of the male and the female gamete, it is called sexual reproduction. Now, sexual reproduction involves three main steps. Pollination, that is transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Fertilization, where the pollen grains grow tubes into the style, and then there is fusion of the male and the female gamete in the ovary. Now take a look here. You can see this flower. You can see the stamens. The stamens have the anther. The anther contains pollen grains. The pollen grain lands on the stigma of the flower. It grows pollen tubes that enter the ovule. The pollen tubes contain the male gamete. It enters the ovule where is present the female gamete. The fusion between the male and the female gamete takes place, and then the ovary develops into a seed, and the ovary develops into a fruit, and the ovules develop into seeds. The seeds germinate and we have a new plant. So this reproduction that gives a new plant through fusion is called sexual reproduction. Now we have another kind of reproduction where there is no fusion of the male and the female gamete. Such a reproduction is called vegetative reproduction. In vegetative reproduction, the vegetative parts of the parent plant like stems, roots and leaves are used to give a new plant. For example, here we have root vegetables. We can grow a new plant by planting the root. Here we have a plant from which a branch is broken and then put into the soil. Here we are using the stem to get a new plant. Potato, onion and ginger are underground stems. They have buds on them, so we can get new plants from the buds on these plants. Here I have a leaf of bryophyllum. There are buds on the margin of the leaf. These buds grow into new plants. Next, we come to dispersal of seeds. Now, if all the seeds had to fall beneath the parent plant, would they survive? Would they have got enough of water, sunlight, nutrients? No, there would be overcrowding. That is why seeds have to be scattered over a wider area so that they grow properly. So what is dispersal of seeds? The process of scattering of seeds from the parent plant is called seed dispersal. Now let us see how scattering of seeds takes place. Scattering of seeds takes place by wind, by water, through animals and by explosion. Now we will take each one of them and study it. Now this is scattering of seeds by wind. Now seeds of plants that are scattered by wind are light. They have wing-like structures that help to be blown by the wind. Some of them have hairy bristles like the seeds of dandelion have feathery bristles. Next, scattering or dispersal of seeds by water. Now plants that grow along the coast and plants that grow in water like lotus and coconut trees. Coconut trees grow along the coast. Lotus grows in water. So the seeds of these plants are scattered or carried by water. Coconut floats in water. So it is the water takes the coconut to another place. For example, we have coconut trees on islands, remote islands. How have the coconut trees reached there? The coconuts float in the water and reach the island. Next, dispersal through animals. Animals also scatter seeds. Some seeds have hook-like structures on them. They have spine-like structures on them. So these fruits that have these structures like spines or hooks on them, they get stuck to the fur of the animals. Sometimes they even get stuck to the clothing of humans. You can see them stuck on clothing here, on the shoes. Then you can see them stuck here on the fur of this dog. Now, animals also eat fruits. Now, the seeds are not digested. So the seeds they pass out through the feces. So this is another way how seeds are scattered through animals. Dispersal of seeds by explosion. In this case, the seed pod ripens and it burst opens. And in this way, the seeds are scattered away from the parent plant. Can you see? The seed pod opens, throwing the seeds at a distance. Now, growing plants from spores. There are some plants that do not flower. They are non-flowering plants. They give no fruits. Such plants have special structures on the leaves. Can you see these? These are called spores. Now this is a fern. Ferns, mosses, they are non-flowering plants. So they reproduce with the help of spores. These are the spores on ferns. These are the spores on moss. So today, children, we have studied plant reproduction, which is of two types, sexual and asexual. And sexual reproduction takes place through 3 steps, that is pollination, fertilization and fruit and seed formation. Asexual reproduction is getting a new plant from the vegetative parts of the parent plant, like roots, stems, leaves and spores. You can see here roots from the leaves, from the spores, and this is from the buds of the underground stem. Next, we have also studied dispersal of seeds by wind, dispersal by water, dispersal by animals and dispersal by explosion. Examples are dandelion. The seeds of dandelion, drumsticks and maple are dispersed by wind. You can see the picture here. Take a look at this picture. These are the seeds of drumsticks. These are the seeds of maple. Can you see this wing-like structure? Then dispersal of seeds by water. I have a lotus and coconut. I have a picture here of lotus. You already know how coconut looks like. Dispersal of seeds by animals. Guava, tomato and tiger's claw. I have the picture of tiger's claw. This dispersal is done through animals. Explosion. Examples are okra, that is lady's finger, bhindi, and poppy seeds. Can you see this? So when this ripens, the seed pod bursts, scattering the seeds. Children, I hope you have understood this lesson. Read the lesson in your textbook. Thank you.